The Miles Franklin Literary Award is perhaps the most prestigious literary award. It was established in 1954 by the generous benefaction of the famous Australian author Miles Franklin. Despite the fact she lived a life of some, indeed, poverty, really, she worked hard to establish a corpus of funds that she thought she would give to the nation, really, as the Miles Franklin Literary Award. She was hoping that by offering this award, she would be giving writers opportunities that she didn't have. Despite the fact she was living in this kind of fairly modest circumstances, she was deliberately saving her pennies to establish this award. She did believe that a country needed to tell its own story, so there was this kind of fundamental sense of nationalism, belief that Australia couldn't call itself a developed or sophisticated nation unless it could tell its own stories. To be awarded the Miles, in a way, is inserting yourself or the author into a sort of pantheon of Australian literature, and I think that legacy is what drives the award forward.
No, let me welcome you. Hello. How great to be here this evening for this announcement of the Miles Franklin Shortlist for 2021. I'm Cassie McCullagh and I'm from The Bookshelf on ABC Radio National and also from ABC Radio Sydney, and I'm delighted to be part of this exciting event once again. Now, first things first, phones on silent, please. And let's begin proceedings by welcoming Yvonne Weldon for a welcome to country. Thank you, Yvonne.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, sisters and brothers. As was said, my name is Yvonne Weldon. I am a Wiradjuri woman from Cowra, here in New South Wales. I'm from the waters of the Clare, which is also known as the Lachlan, and of the Murrumbidgee Rivers. I am the elected chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, who are the culture authority under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act for the land that we're on. I'd like to pay my respects to all elders past and present, to all First Nations and to you and the many nations of the lands you travelled from this evening, and for those that are online here also. A welcome to country is an age-old tradition. It is more than just words, it is a spiritual process by honouring their ancestors' footsteps we are all walking in, continuing the practice of the many generations before us to the many generations to come. The landscapes of this country tells the stories of our culture, our history and our boundaries. The Eora Nation's country is the Hawkes River in the north, the Nepean in the west and the Georges River in the south. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, the elders and the members, I welcome everyone to the land of the Gadigal. I acknowledge Gadigal people whose spirits and ancestors will always remain with this land, our Mother Earth. My people's practices have sustained us throughout the generations, and they are ingrained into the core of this country, working together as one community and achieving as one community through the hundreds of nations, tribes and clans existing here for over 60,000 years. My people are the oldest living culture of the world. As we're all gathered here this evening, let us all reflect upon the many stories and the truths of this ancient earth, the ones from the First Nations and also from the many nations that have joined us here. Traditionally, Aboriginal people shared our stories through engravings, dance, song and spoken word, originally for our families and our clans. Now it's done in many different mediums of film, plays and words on a page. It is important to keep the stories alive, not just because they should be heard and should be read, but because they need to be, creating our joined history into the greatest book to ever be read. The creativity and truth of written words enriches our lives to be shared and to be connected. And there are many lessons that have been learned at our expense and our devastation. This should and must be acknowledged, not out of a guilt, but to listen, learn, and to come together and commence a healing and creating a future for us all. So don't live regretting what we should have done, but create the legacy of what must be done. And as you connect, learn, and share tonight, tomorrow, and beyond, don't lose sight of the important work that still needs to be done to bring my people, your people, and all our people together. All of us can make positive changes for this country now and into the future. To make that future possible, let us all draw upon my people's spirits as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide you as we strive forward for us all. Again, on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, welcome to Gadigal land. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Yes, thank you, Yvonne. That was beautiful, as it always is. And also thank you to Perpetual and the Copyright Agency's Cultural Fund for their strong support of the Miles Franklin Literary Award. And I'd like to acknowledge also the members of Miles Franklin's family who are here with us tonight, which is wonderful. I'd also like to acknowledge my employer, the ABC. It's fantastic that the Miles Franklin ABC Media Partnership is now in its third year and continuing to grow from strength to strength. And don't forget that we are using the hashtag MFLA 2021 tonight, Miles Franklin Literary Award 2021. So post, tweet, get the word out there as we celebrate Australia's best literary talent. Now, as we all know, with the Miles Franklin, it's not just about the award, but the long list and the short list as well. And as one of the previous winners, Josephine Wilson, the author of Extinctions, has said, the Miles Franklin Award defines the canon of Australian literature, and the value of the award is it speaks not just to the past, but to the future. And each year, I think, these lists capture something of the character of the nation for that small moment in time, our dreamings, our imaginings, our preoccupations, and maybe even something from the deepest part of ourselves. And who knows how this strange time will be seen when it, like all of us here, become mere history. Now, we will be footnotes, of course, as we know, in an unknowable story that has no beginning and no end. And this is something that our writers have, well, have been thinking and writing about as well as they've had a captive audience, literally. We've shut out the world and become a hermit nation, but hopefully a hermit nation of readers. Because right now, we are like the villagers of Eyam in Geraldine Brooks's novel of the Plague, Year of Wonders. And just as we have locked ourselves away from the world, we've locked the world away from us as well. And surely this is rich territory for all of our writers. And just as Geraldine's book helps us understand this moment, so too will the books that will be written and read about this time in the future. So the world of books is what we're celebrating here tonight. And that, I think, is a world that is, well, it's a truly Australian club, and one where I think everyone is invited, one where you're free to think and to write and to say what you feel, and not one where someone can pressure you into using words and phrases and their influence on you to have meanings that may be twisted to their purpose. And it's also a place, I think, where our best and most intriguing stories are told, with the possible exception of some of our courts. So why don't we get to the awards and the 2021 shortlist. The award, of course, was established after Miles Franklin died in 1954 at the age of 74, and a sum of money from her estate was allocated to a trust fund which facilitated the inaugural award in 1957. Hands up, who knows who won that? If you, yeah, if you said Patrick White, you were right. Voss, and he won it again in 1961 for Riders in the Chariot. To give us a deeper legacy of insight into the legacy of Miles Franklin, let's hear from Kim Williams, the chair of the Copyright Agency, our award sponsor tonight, along with Perpetual. Kim, of course, has been at the forefront of the media and arts sectors in Australia for his whole career and is one of its most passionate advocates. Kim Williams.
Thanks very much, Cassie. Today we come together to celebrate the shortlisted nominees for the Miles Franklin Literary Award, which, as you all know, was bequeathed by the wholly original and proudly independent Stella Maria Sarah Miles Franklin. I'm really delighted that we can be here in person at one of Australia's finest cultural institutions, the State Library of New South Wales. I also welcome all of those attending digitally. As I'm sure many already know, the State Library of New South Wales is the custodian of Franklin's private letters, literary papers, photo albums and personal belongings. Included in that collection are the small pocket diaries she had kept since 1909. 47 in total are held at the library, including one copy that was discovered and acquired in 2018. The library is also the home of a Miles Franklin printed book collection. The shortlist announced today recognises Australian works that are of the highest literary merit and which present Australian life in any of its aspects and phases, as set out in the bequest. As many of you will know, Miles Franklin was fully engaged in the big issues of her day. The importance of artists generally and the characters and stories which illuminated literature were profoundly important to her. I'm pretty confident that if she were alive today, she'd be impressed by the diversity and richness of Australian literature. She'd be shocked by the damage done to our environment and engaged with issues of gender and equality. Personally, I believe she would applaud this year's shortlist. I feel certain she'd be troubled by the disrespect for copyright shown by too many entities in the modern era. Too often, the view from too many of our important institutions seems to be, how can we pay less for copyright and even find ways of avoiding paying authors and publishers at all? This is in stark contrast with a view that says copyright is an important legal and economic framework that not only affords creators respect and control over their work, but also ensures the flow of money that supports artistic work, investment, and continuing creation. Our job at the Copyright Agency is to give contemporary life to copyright and to stand up for writers, publishers, and visual artists. Licensing the work of Australian creators for fair payment, advocating policy that supports creative life, and running legal cases in support of creators and publishers. We also fund a wide range of projects through our Cultural Fund, as Cassie mentioned. We have, through the Cultural Fund, been a substantial supporter of the Miles Franklin Award since 2014. It's a privilege for the Copyright Agency to assist with the promotion of the finalists and their work, and to provide each of this year's shortlisted nominees with a $5,000 individual award. I want to recognise all of the Miles Franklin Award authors over the 63 years of the awards, to warmly congratulate the shortlisted authors announced tonight, and to invite you all to wholeheartedly celebrate Australian creativity. Stella's marvellous legacy has honoured writing since her far-sighted bequest was made over 60 years ago. God bless her. On behalf of the Copyright Agency, I congratulate all tonight's nominees. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Kim, and of course we completely agree. Where would we be without the stories that are being told by Australians, for Australians, and of course the rest of the world? And as Miles herself has said, it's the highest form of culture and craftsmanship in art is to use local materials. That way you stand a chance of adding to culture. The other way you are in danger of merely imitating it. So we have reached the moment we are all waiting for. Do not delay, Adam Suckling, as you come to tell us who the shortlisted authors are for the 2020 Miles Franklin Literary Award. Adam Suckling is the CEO of the Copyright Agency. Here he is.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Yvonne. Welcome to country. Yvonne is actually also standing for political office, so good luck with that. I got a brochure in the mail the other day, so I'll be voting for you. Thank you, Cassie, for being marvellous MC, as you were last year and the year before. And thank you also to our chair, Kim Williams, for your words. It's a really great pleasure to see so many of you in this room this year at the Mistral Library, and to welcome all of you watching around Australia. It is really fantastic that so many people can now participate in this. And one of the real benefits of COVID was that what we discovered when we were compelled to put it online was you could take this event and the announcement to a much, much broader audience around the whole country. And so we're very, very, very happy to have you all here, and we're very happy to have everyone digitally watching as well. Before I reveal the shortlist, I'd like to acknowledge our very important partners in tonight's proceedings. Firstly, to Perpetual, for their ongoing stewardship of the Miles Franklin. Now in its 64th year, Perpetual continues to work to ensure that we can gather here to honour Miles Franklin, celebrate Australian writers, and bring amazing Australian stories to a wider audience. To our media partners, as Cassie said, for the third year running, the ABC, thank you for your support and for your national coverage of the Miles Franklin Award. It is a really, really natural fit because the ABC have got so many shows and so many programs in which they can highlight, discuss, analyse and take to audiences the shortlisted authors. So thank you, Cassie, and thank you to the ABC. I'd like also to thank the judging panel. It is a very, very big task. I know sometimes judges will send pictures of all of the books they received, and there are an awful lot, so thank you very much. To each of the judges, to Mitchell librarian Richard Neville, to author Bernadette Brennan, to academic Dr. Melinda Harvey, to author and book critic James Lay, and to author and journalist Sasonki Samang. Thank you for your time, for your commitment, and for your passion to the Miles Franklin Award. And finally, I'd like to thank the State Library of New South Wales, including the State Librarian, Dr. John Vallance, for providing us with this fabulous venue and for their support in the judging process. There's a lot of work that goes into making tonight a success, and so we're grateful for the blood, sweat and tears that make the MFLA possible. So now the moment you've been waiting for. The shortlisted authors for the Miles Franklin Literary Award for 2021 are, I think they'll come up there. Sorry. Amanda Laurie for The Labyrinth, text publishing.
Something takes a hold of you when you're writing fiction, some image, some scene, some little piece of dialogue, and one of the things that intrigued me was the way in which the very, very old archetypal image of the labyrinth, which is found in most cultures, was suddenly appearing again. And also I was looking for a poetic image which symbolised for me some other area of experience that we can never quite define. The structure of events is that a middle-aged woman sells up in the city, goes to live in a small coastal town to be near a new prison where her son is serving a life sentence. And for various reasons she decides to build a labyrinth, and she has to find someone to help her build it. And who she finds and the relationship they develop is what structures the plot. I usually write the first 20,000 words of any novel over and over and over. It's like music. You're kind of tuning up the prose, tuning up the language, and what you want is that sense of absolute conviction. I'm not interested in writing bleak fiction. I'm not interested in prettying the world either, but I think if you succeed in evoking that other space, that zone where we are our best selves, then the reader will get a hit of positive energy. You're aiming to create an experience, a semi-mystical experience almost.
Andrew Pipos for Lucky's, Pan Macmillan, Australia.
It's a huge honour to be shortlisted for the Miles Franklin. For a long time I worked other jobs and pursued my writing at night, and work on Lucky's felt like a private world. It felt like an extension of the daydreaming that I did as a child. It's a novel that spans several decades. It's mostly about a man nicknamed Lucky. The novel traces its whole life. But it's also a story about the people whose lives intersected with Lucky's in some meaningful way. I was interested in writing about a vanished world, the world of the Greek Australian cafe. My grandparents and uncles and aunts, they worked in these types of cafes. Thematically, this is a novel about the pursuit of love and family. It's about how people respond to failure and success. And it's also a novel about deception. It's about the different kinds of lies that we tell, the compassionate lies that allow us to maintain healthy relationships, lies that provide a sense of escape, of adventure, and lies that poison. Well, I write mostly at night, when things are quiet. Silence is important, coffee is important, sitting on the couch and thinking about my story is important too. But writing is about putting your head down for a long time and having faith, a notion of trust that things will work out.
Aravind Adiga for Amnesty, Pan Macmillan, Australia.
The central character is a Sri Lankan immigrant to Australia living in Sydney, who has arrived under a student visa but has then overstayed. He is now, as he describes himself, 4 years in illegal. One of his clients, one of the people he cleans for, has been killed. The police are aware of this, the body has been found, so on and so forth. But he has a pretty clear idea, which no one else does, including the police, of who did it. If he reports his suspicions to the police, there is a very good chance he will be deported. And if he does not, how can he live with himself and his conscience? We never number the drafts. It's just he's constantly working away. The idea of this book was clear from the beginning, that it was going to be set over this single day. Aravind will send over drafts on a regular basis. Sometimes feedback is called for and sometimes not. Sometimes he's just kind of marking the progress of his changing of details and so on and so forth. The fact that the book is shortlisted for the Miles Franklin as being, Australia's premier literary award and his first time of producing a book that's eligible is such a recognition of, in a way, that gamble that he's taken to write about a country that he's never written about in fiction before.
Daniel Davis Wood for At the Edge of the Solid World, Brio Books.
At the Edge of the Solid World begins with the story of a man and a woman who are expatriate Australians, and they lose a newborn child very early on after just one day of life. So although the book begins with this very limited story of two characters, it takes on a scope that goes back thousands of years, through the dispossession of the Celts to the Highland clearances of Scotland, the American Civil War, the Australian colonial project, the Balkan War, and Australia's current asylum regime. The inspiration for the book as a whole came from panic, came from crisis. I went through a difficult period and I didn't know if I would be able to write or publish another book ever. As I was writing it, I had to be completely uncompromising, really, that it had to have everything that I would want to see myself put into a book if I only had one more shot. This is a book that consciously goes to excesses. That's the kind of book that a book of really capacious, very different and unconventional possibilities that I would like to see more of. So I hope my book can kind of advance that. When I'm writing, I do it longhand, and lots of it is just blanks, parts to insert, gaps, X's and things like that, where I can really figure out the musicality of the words first and the duration. And then after that is when the narrative information starts to come in. I see how that rhythm needs to be padded out with substance.
Madeline Watts for the Inland Sea Pushkin Press.
The book is really about emergencies, emotional emergencies and ecological emergencies, all different kinds of emergencies. The story takes place in 2013 and it follows a young woman as she tries to figure out what to do in the year after she finishes university. She takes a job fielding phone calls at 000, and over time she begins to feel the calls dominate her life and what she thinks about it. The calls provide a perspective into emergencies happening all over Australia, and she becomes especially attuned to the ecological and the climactic events. So I started writing this book a couple of years after I moved to New York, and I was working at a bookstore. Originally, the inspiration was one of homesickness, and at the same time as I was writing, I was becoming more and more attuned to the natural world and to the worsening effects of climate change. And I was already writing some of the core elements of the novel, but as I redrafted, so many of the books I was reading and the ideas about the natural world I was being exposed to, they began to seep into the book and influence its structure. I think in fragments and digressions. So in part, I was trying to find the right structure to fit the way my thoughts work. Sometimes that meant printing out the novel, cutting it up into pieces and physically rearranging it on the floor. Winning the Miles Franklin Literary Award would be an enormous honour.
And finally, Robbie Arnott for the Rain Heron Text Publishing.
In high school, I went and saw all the Miles Franklin shortlistees as they travelled around the country. I saw them at the Launceston Library, where I saw Alexis Wright talk about Carpentaria. So to be on the list myself I can't believe it. It's incredible. I didn't know how to write about the world anymore. I was confused and upset. So I tried writing a fable and creating my own modern myth. The Rain Heron is set in an unnamed country that's recently gone through a military coup, and a woman has fled to the mountains to escape all the violence. And then a group of soldiers also come to the mountain. They're hunting for the Rain Heron, a mythological creature. And they try and coerce this woman into helping them find it, while she tries to convince them that it's just a fairy tale and it doesn't exist. Oh, I often don't think about what the impact of my writing will be. I just hope they don't throw the book across the room. If they were to think about the book afterwards, I'd hope it would help them look at the world with wider eyes and think about what we can do for the world and what the world does for us. I just try and cobble writing in the gaps of my days, before work, after work. Has to be early in the week because later in the week I drink too much beer. After 6 months or a year of this, I have a book and I've lost half my mind. I can't even conceive of winning. It feels a long way beyond me. But mostly it would be a validation of my writing and the work I put into it, and also of the work that other people have put into me, so my family and my teachers, and people who've educated me and supported me. Winning the award would really be great for them because it would show that all the work they've put into me has hopefully paid off.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Adam, and congratulations to all the shortlisted authors. I'm really torn, having read at least half of those. I don't know if I could choose, and so I will be watching with great interest what develops the next time we are assembled. So thank you to everyone who is here. Thank you to people watching on the live stream. Please join us in celebrating and using that hashtag MFLA, Miles Franklin Literary Award. I get it wrong every year. 2021. Congratulations again. And if you haven't read the full shortlist, then, like me, get reading. And for those of us who are in this room, why don't we go to the Friends room and enjoy a drink and say hello to the authors who are here tonight, which is also very exciting. Thanks very much. I'm Cassie McCullagh. See you next time.
Perpetual were very proud as trustee to have a role in acting as a steward for the vision that Miles had to ensure that Australian life in all of its phases is appropriately represented and celebrated in literature.